wondered whether it's a good idea to tell an admissions committee about mental health issues or concerns you might have? Like, do they really need to know that you were diagnosed with ADHD as a child? It's managed, it doesn't really affect your life. Do they need to know that? Does it matter? Do you have to tell them that? My name is Alice Foley, and I'm an associate law school consultant with Montgomery Admissions Consulting, where we specialize in first-generation and minority law school application support. In this video, we're going to be talking about whether or not you should disclose any mental health issues or concerns, anything like that in your application. If there's a reason to do so, if there's a reason not to do so, we're going to talk through all of that. So I'm going to cover 3 main points. And the very first one, and honestly this is just a good habit anyway, is to do your research. Even before you apply, look into the mental health and wellness support services at the law school that you're interested in applying to. So if you know that you are going to want to take advantage of a college counseling center, or you know that you may need extra support at some point in time, do your research. Look into the schools that you are thinking about applying to. Make sure that they can support you. This is not a one-way process. You're picking a school just as much as they are picking you, and you want to make sure that you have found a school that is a good fit for you. With law schools that are attached to big undergraduate campuses, the law school may not have a dedicated counselor or a dedicated set of support services that would serve you. You may have to go through main campus. And if that's the case, you definitely want to check in to see what that process is. A great question to ask always is whether or not a counseling center or a crisis center or something along those lines, whatever that office is on campus, especially if you're sharing it with the undergraduate campus, ask them if they prioritize professional school students. Some do, some don't, but make sure you know whether or not you're going to be able to get that help if you need it, or if you think you might need it. The next thing I'm going to tell you may sound crazy, but if you can't find that information on a website somewhere, and they don't typically post that stuff, pick up the phone, send off an email. Most of the time, they're not going to give you super detailed information if you aren't a student yet, but they'll give you the basic idea. They'll answer the question whether or not professional students are prioritized. An even better idea, if you know somebody that goes to that school or went to that school recently, ask them. Schedule coffee. See what the climate is there. See what the degree of support that the law school itself offers, that the campus offers, honestly, even that the community offers. But make sure that you are going into a place that can serve you well when you are picking your law schools. Now, if you have gotten this far in this video and are like, I don't really understand what you're talking about when you say mental health and wellness support services or something along those lines, there's a really, really great report. It's getting a little dated at this point, but there's a new one coming out soon. And that's the ABA Path to Lawyer Wellbeing Report. It covers the entirety of the legal community. Law students, lawyers, judges, retirees, everybody's on there. And it has a whole section dedicated to law schools and has suggestions for what they can and should be doing to support their students through the law school process. Because honestly, law school sometimes is real hard. And knowing that you've got support services there to pick you up when you fall, to make sure that you are getting the support, the help that you need if you should need it, makes it a lot easier to make it through. If you've had to struggle through it all on your own and you needed help but didn't know where to go or didn't have a place to go, at the end of your time in law school, are you really going to be that excited about being an attorney? Like, are you going to want to do that as your job? You just went through 3 years that were miserable and probably didn't have to be. So do your research. Make sure that you know that the law school that you choose to apply to is going to be able to support you in the way that you need. The other one little point on research is if you know where you want to practice, I know this is getting ahead, it's not really law school application related, but if you know where you want to practice, see what the state bar asks in their character and fitness questions. Most of the time, they're not going to ask broadly about any mental health issues or concerns. They're going to ask about them in really specific ways. A lot of the time, it looks something like disclosing whether or not you have a mental health issue or concern that will affect your ability to practice. And that's a key phrase. If you're managed and you're doing fine, there is no reason to tell them because it's not going to affect your ability to practice. If you have a support system set up that works for you, you don't need to explain that because it's not going to affect your ability to practice. That's key there. Don't let it go. The other time that mental health issues and concerns sometimes comes up is in criminal incidents. And that's typically just as an incidental part of the criminal question. So the next point that I'm going to go into, and this is really key and kind of relates back to the state bar thing. Answer the questions you are asked. Read them carefully and answer only what you are asked. You don't need to give them any additional information if you don't have to. Law schools right now, none of them ask broadly about mental health conditions as far as I'm aware, and I've looked at a lot of them. Nobody asks about that. Character and fitness questions on your law school application typically relate to 3 or 4 broadish categories. The first one is academic disciplinary actions. They want to know how you acted while you were a student, if you were placed on academic probation, if you were accused of plagiarism, if you were caught cheating or something along those lines in the classroom. They want to know. They also want to know about any non-academic discipline, whether or not you were suspended or expelled, you racked up like 80 dorm violations while you lived in the dorms, something like that. The next thing that they're going to ask about are criminal offenses. Pretty straightforward, and they'll give you a description, and it usually sounds something like any criminal law violation that you were arrested, cited, or ticketed for, or charged with committing. Now, don't panic if you're like me and have racked up a lot of parking tickets in your day. They don't typically ask about non-moving traffic violations, so your parking tickets are safe, but if you ran a red light, had a fender bender, something along those lines, those you're going to have to tell them about. The other thing that they don't ask about and they don't expect you to tell most of the time is if there's an expunged or sealed record in your history. You typically do not need to tell a law school that. Now, these character and fitness questions play 2 roles. First, the admissions committee at your law school is going to look through them. And second, they're going to go to the state bar. Most state bars ask for a copy of your law school application as part of your application to sit for the bar exam. If there are major discrepancies, they're going to ask why. But again, answer the question you are asked and nothing more. And the last category doesn't show up on every application. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And that's 2 little things. That's professional organization discipline. So if you belong to a professional organization, you hold a license to do some type of professional work before you come to law school, and your governing body, your licensing body, whatever that is, disciplined you at any point in time, revoked your license, suspended your license, that kind of stuff. They want to know about that too. And the last thing, like I said, is some specific financial events. Typically, this looks like major debt default or bankruptcy. For that particular question, a lot of the time, if it's answered yes, all it does is signal to the admissions committee that they want to make sure that they're not putting you in line for worse financial decisions. It's likely not going to change your application decision by itself, I promise. But law school is long and it's expensive. As admissions committee members, we want to make sure we are setting you up for success in our law school. Now, the very last point is that you can absolutely tell the admissions committee if you want to, but with the exception of some very rare circumstances, you do not have to. Sometimes a mental health issue or concern will come up in your personal statement or your diversity statement or in an addendum that's talking about a bad semester or, a bad LSAT or something along those lines. And that's okay. And you don't necessarily need to go into more detail than what is provided in the place that it showed up first. But at the end of the day, the law school application process for you is about convincing the admissions committee that you belong in law school. If the mental health issue or concern that comes up, like I said, in your personal statement, your diversity statement, whatever, whichever one of those essays that it shows up in, if it is an important piece of your history and it's an important piece of the story that you want to tell to that admissions committee in your application, you can absolutely tell them. But again, you don't have to. If you don't want to, don't. If it does not make sense to, don't. If you choose to self-disclose, whether it is showing up somewhere in a personal statement or a diversity statement or any one of your other essays, or you choose to write a specific addendum relating to your mental health issue or concern, make sure you know why you are doing it. Like I said, this process is all about convincing the admissions committee that you belong in law school. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, disclosure like that can raise a red flag. Don't worry though. That's not the end of it. If you are telling them a story about how you have it managed and you are taking care of yourself in the ways that you need to make sure that you are successful and that you are healthy and that you are well, that's really what we want to see as admissions committee members. There is no reason that a mental health issue or concern should keep you from law school, but law school can be difficult. And we as admissions committee members don't want to put you in a position where you will be unwell, that will stress you to the point of breaking. We don't want that. So if you're telling us that it is under control and you have a plan, that's great. That's what we want to see. You're being responsible. You're taking care of yourself. That's key. The other thing that self-disclosure may provide is a chance for you to get connected with those support services that you should know all about because you've done your research before you even start law school. At some places, if, for example, you need some type of test accommodation, whether it's extra time or you need to be in a very quiet room or something along those lines, sometimes that process takes a really long time to get through. And if you can start it before even going to orientation, that means come midterms, come finals, you're not going to be worrying about whether or not it's set up and you're ready to go. It also means that you can get connected in with any counseling services or something along those lines. So, like I said, if it's a counseling center that you share with a main campus large university type deal, if you can get on the list of their patients before school even starts, you are ahead of the game. And that can be super helpful, especially if they don't prioritize professional school students. There are lots of reasons to talk about a mental health issue or concern that you may have, that you may be dealing with in your law school application. But at the end of the day, you really do want to make sure that there is a why behind telling the admissions committee when you don't have to. Now, if you think you learned something, if you think this was helpful, share it with a friend, like and subscribe down below, and we'll talk soon.